tutao Salvador mal masauler tialte al el me ngadura adre belau mtigal lorenz ratio mtigal ngara internet uko aisa bebira update malungil total mora rogul adre lorenz tial program mal masaul so mil join kider al tutao do aisa bebira aisa tial go REEF center ki Salvador me gumu lo cor o aisa isel sel tial nombre al anniversary blol kita other belau sel dora mrulam asange sel wal mregam asangar ada ora soril lo que lo hacemlo angrang matik cora provide update bol mrege ANDREA direct cora provide bebida detail es el volmrega angagi delle Geraldina directora of research amo o aisa bebira que lurior el Tialgo REEF center gida motmoklo and then amolasta professor Palumbi Stanford University angang salila Tialgo REEF center motatal da lurior nganya urol tongotmok ringia Tialgo REEF center ma Stanford University lo mesa igagil msisi el random ngartiar el angal mrula fieldwork lo ngil time was me da al mom direct al coro ay satellite el tial lurere del gidamot mokring ma agot lo ule Salvador tial anniversary tia se mlangi sera January 17 en malmle ngila turn out direct al tokal ada lo de al saber el mea direct al saber el orden singir el tiamle live tial Palau wave radio digo mo la loren azule la senet presidenta Hokons Paules mar tigaro gul senators el tiramle co hoster tial 18th anniversary ra REEF center e direct le tigal staff ra senet Salvador tamralmle mring lorior lo bunget el gilt makliti al anniversary msel basio tial venue mlangi al anniversary manongil direct al maloren azule la gel chief clerk ra seneta en Pedro mtigero gul staff ra senet el malno no sé manemring lorior lo buntia staff ra gidra REEF center el kult maklia tial anniversary malmlongil direct al manongil arngud el seguid el gasus ay badul marugul belau no sobre el show energy del seguido el anniversary night ma direct el bilung ma bebir sil belau te direct no sobre el show energy man no ngilarngu de gora klorngu der seguido el anniversary el mestir tiga rubag mar ma asel el me join supporter tial 18th anniversary la REEF center angagi del presidente Mosawa no dia el me join energy del seguido el Sils di vice president tamnos el mei ma arbebira other obisra president mar ministers mangagi del speaker Anastasio direct no de hace el mei and in direct el delegates el mes el join regid lo malo ren azulir a supporter tir e mas el presence tir seguid el casus Aigel total no sé del race el anniversary amle $132,268.43 Aigang aigel cents leng aigel bebira donation legal gora in kind aigel me provide wa gift certificate el no sabría adalo mar aigel direct lo parte tial fundraising so man neungila a turn out direct mal tial 132,000 mal cloludo son malungila arangudra el egal ngeso el tigal adel kul mas unclear holders ma togol businesses ma tigel private el individuals el direct el mlay yom ara tigete direct el mlay donate mo udliti al mal cloludo Salvador egidam ngelo aseng mal dial sal lungila economy kloa telgibel taita udo enditia mal kloludo so tianga daseng malungilo otia hacer ndira other belau ma supportra other belal morago REEF center maigal luriol go REEF center gidamrul mo king artiang e maloren azulir arbekla adem dengelo ase tianga mal kloludo tamal masaular adra supporter tir mira agor REEF Center. Akti dilungang klira tigil Senate ma House ma President ma Rubul Belau ma Masil Belau and din direct kal ngaringi mali misel betokol adam ne donate medic ask tra ANDREA malgora di telgibel provide agora a little bit detail about tiga gidel adam ne donate tial 18th anniversary la REEF Center.
Mansola CEO tial lister kama mal kama ngala magibo mo mas aroguy ngok ngamdit tial tal sirang maktimo soagal Vimo highlight tirigel tirane donate email tela el morbab tiratil du tatapti donor kamam akmo mas alnia from lowest to highest ma kote ngania Marcelo and Sandra Pirantosil tirane donate 5,000 Blue Bay Petroleum Inc 6,000 Surang and Sons Company 10,000 Yasuda Scholarship Foundation 10,000 House of Delegates 16,000 Office of the President and Ministries ringi 25,000 ma trial na co-hoster kamer el alir Senate 25,000 virak el mooban trial na donate na ringi in-kind donation trial na provide gift certificate material na help provide logistics egi muspe el whatever magingal ngania Penthouse Hotel Malus Avil IP&E Palau Inc Executive Lounge and Restaurant Palau Telecom Waves Marina Cafe Vita Alilay Spa by Mandara WCTC PNCC Palau Beach Bungalows Hiromi's Beauty Shop and Massage, Dolphins Pacific, Qatar State Government, El Solid Waste Management Office, First Lady Debir Mangsao, Masil Belau, Mangaramay Brel. Ya, ongin senso mo recognize ayal trial partners ramel tiram le help programam el cater mamle provide beverages or sell gasus. Ngarngi koting sama recognize tiya co-hoster ram tiya Senate tentel olbira kalulaw mastaffer tira man lemring lower lobang gamamra asaraw ale lagi mo tolomu ra planning tel event tel malmuter sel gasus ma Shimbros International Inc tira blol bekal ra lobang gamam ra bekal event tel tira blol donate may mang serve agel beverages sa sayid al gasus Alilay Restaurant tirane cater menu evira kanari trial adrian mlay help serve event titim siblings ngar alay ma kendal titim tiramle entertainer sel gasus raw alel moraen dan maldimle complementer tial gasus madin ngila entertainment Qatar State Ranger tiramle assist control traffic manne goso da la basyo matamanne ngosui sige dal part tra event manne ngil mara lamlaim dinna gal bolga total kambes ko solei macheban amasho tira amla capture asal gasus with good photos akom amlame sa website tra PICRC gal highlight asal gasus WCTC printing tira mila siya sing regal souvenir giveaway souvenirs or other sel night dim lomreg ang print them rose ang angan nga vira kalngaya givir kam rose agad siya singa man lebetor vira clamor ga we Mr. Salvador mar adam el kumiwa before we began planning my god talk show gim advertise im sa da relela PICRC vira kamne broadcast the live sel gasus this one marang asolir tira givir agul tiram le help tel klungela bradel luriar gimururingi maulang madinaw ngila say the anniversary.
Sulang ANDREA, Moise Salvador sel dokora di gut makli de morse ensure ti al man ungil night a venue ma entertainment ma catering ding brane tokar adal lol ngaseo emle ul mumnos el man ungil ti al anniversary mo daman lo renga sulira beklat tigel ulmas ertira ANDREA mangi tigel direct lul ngasen no dia el tung clear ndi ka mal appreciate tigel rogurirul mo oruliti al anniversary man mongin El Salvador direct el bekra que es el dorur ti al anniversary in soad al gora wasen al sumo mangarngi as edrulira guxel next el lemut el mal mongil mal open lo rensa o de suira ada mal sumar ada orang ani kamen tertir en sebril el mora tiga gida tokol ada ngara Facebook lo rengs men sebril el kamen tra Facebook mal ubet ta kamen tra Facebook ra Palau mal uben sel Facebook ra REEF center gidma kad mom denge tra el gukruli manexira sum ngani ada kora suggestion ada lo se mara ruli kad mal welcome ay el suggestion So egida agora aisra tial anniversary endin direct tial anniversary al dum godum rurngi amos edel support igal mos edel matmok igal betog lurior lurior omsu maurior osis akl ma gagida Geraldine ringi el director of research mens elgo ka direct el hal san moditen ins elgo adi maskida el gora bebira aurior tial go REEF center gida matmok direct sum kurang ani announcement gira wa internship direct sa el mega sulang intedi.
Okay. Ma era buku sa dai do ka research era anniversary mlani sel education sel carnival education mlet 3 days tiang amal mle to karangal school met medal 550 plus students amno sa baril May yulu lo mongela 5 ga rusel agency el sel gayid el 3 days الجايد الايجنسيز مع أدرى PICRC عملوا أطباء يجلو كمسو بلورول مستقبلا نالجرا سكول الجوك مم بنجي جايد الوريول النيام قد مقرب بيكريك ما يجل ايجنسي بارتنرز سرقمام من successful غما ما غرق مال ملونين ما يوم ده سلوا سي تل مرة جايين مال مرتجيد الكارنيفال ويجلو لقون قال CEO السوق مغنيا قرا قامن سر أدرى بلو مسكول الجيل التجيد يجيك مال والغام الرول المونيل الجيل سلجوك من الميل كارنيفال راو era anniversary. Actimo mention na bebi raigel uriol gi moru ra PICRC, igaigel research gi moru la ligaigi del donations ar other blue agencies mar individuals sa ol ngasel mga tmo kay del uriol. Magi of course agim su ba to ramaran da mga isel do la sen coral reef monitoring at tang abek leru ra kay mururingi tem lo mareka survey ra last year me lang agim blues ersel ba biere mo otobdin mo ra buay mo sa other blue mo den wa say ungana staros sa igal al bol na balur belaw maliwak ka balur belaw agi direct ra ngaringia umusu bel girel sel el eastern reef recovery mang kagidam den aseng na isel klol maktablol maklol typhoon el silpir vera rakmed el 2012 ma 2013 ma PICRC amno so el gut makli omsu vetam lo mare kasera December 10 nomre karra mal dir nomre mal no arang mamlo ay so aseng ngaringa pa bier el tobdu tiang ada kali di legal technical report tiang publication mang sel to bagi muktan mertiang malu bagi direct kam advertising ay gel garo sel media outlets lo ay sa other viral giret tayi del omsu el tiang al eastern reef o ay sergi del base sel ngal do bagi del maklol natural disasters or what typhoon en arang rate the recovery kay del almol may the reef for gid ang batok omsu hindi kukti mo mention one more tiang omsu bilgera langi gel momu ora langar march al year yagi kuk mo 12 del mo survey gel fista gel didisel mamaklung langi gel mliwak rabulur belaw itang amil gat mok 2 years ago ela gel mukton magut makli seruwi legat the report tol wasi ungaras taru say gagi del ngigal na raal malela blur belaw lastly ngi gel pan MPA selga ma regularly every 2 years el direct yagi 12 del mo survey igang agi mol ngaseo igal state government nga marine protected area sertir mumlo mare kala last year a report tabi bira state na umre ka report ngi maigel state tanang mai hindi bebira state ta dira kay mo subes hindi ka bol mare kala ngamangal omsub musel esunes el todo ige report tagi mal mora state ngi tagi del survey ako klumut lomo or el al August el ara mal sukum kom other state government malugo kom rangers kom conservation officers orang sel al time gangi tumongot mokkar kamil gidela august le uriora maral nei kadamo partner ko klumuto survey ga gidel marine protected areas egal states ndira kalangarin ya collaborative work kamam egal collaborative work agim daklo uriora bangela kakarosel al ab malubong school ngaray kelvela el altame ngaringa urior el maralo bangela Stanford University kaya del ruba ka Dr. Palumbi tologam el alsil sa mosmodi mendabo kusa daringi direct ngaringa at ada kagarus el tainga kalwa University of Hawaii ma reduce tanga rashabal el gimda ka urior musuba tokora amran ma climate change lastly ngaringa agora amral isel stabil gibom ndal mal isel stabil gibom moruring ko tagi moruring ablu belaw tiang amomo ora mart sel arak loyo lo bengel sel science center amon ako almom suba plastic so gimal interested they look forward more segi lom suba lengol talbo doruring ira PICRC ogore diso al mo mention wa sengaring relam lo bengel la PNMS tiang am suba igel socio-economic studies el gukmala utasur adala blul gire la uspalle la gayi del nigrang wal direct over lo bentari el rule of fisheries research e gayi del maklol nigala mundi gayi da bokpas ya sugum moringa tamra riuleng se kan mut mokmu bebile aktor
sulang Geraldine Salvador gayi del research al domong mal maklo tutelela asu ngwal ko wai seguido lo samaradong at mokregid or makaradong at mokortial da bed gida Geraldine le mentioner sel tial recovery Eastern Reef awandra agora result sel study labo de sanga base sel sugu mungora mo anyar wat typhoon mo tamal lamranda igel clo tutelel ngarnge gagi del arwaman lamau marwa arangal igel ngigel mga yumdo le sel sugu ngarnge gagi del ngigel mga yum ding moklit tial bertakla mansab ela igal maranda lamut el dub el mut recover Masel maybe sel mongar nga kaduk mong se trawan data meme mal di focus se yidel aigal las mal maklo tutele aigal ngigel mangayum da leiga nga rulit al refergid man se el wasem mo kora resilience so man sulang atede direct o tial active mention tegi del education carnival ti agora mal ater tial team ra republic el wase innovative learning and excellence le ti ading il titira ngal ra school was ela instead of dinga classroom ko me ngaringa special el gora atletel el omsu legal bek el agency metial ko REEF center amiruringi mangaringa milsadaral ma milsadra tial cheli fisleiga ma tegi de levase marang adabilda foundation se malungil game le tigang nga school agora o mes lo ase al sum kada malangi le ad sal map to kol ngil tial ngani tial gora structure a web or cross mong wasingi del gora mage go gidel dia hadith nga rogul mong kang tial structure so tiang ngora ngolchis akla important concept mo nga school nding in a well dia legal traditional in the classroom kind of learning ma direct mal gora mo ater tial تجد التمرة بدور بلال الرغم so say next year direct كذا الموت الممرورني سيجد around the anniversary كذا مو الموت الممرورني ngani tigel baby ra school agora amlom kita sudum lo de ahlungi remens me la del mut el mal motral maybe ndi roi de me askara a Salvador ma Palau me direct lo ser gid lo ais lo se moringir oing lang ngani baby ra school dimlahal or sensel dimlahal bolo ngei we try mal mo lo plangan ngudo ais ra bek la mal bek el sensei tamo ngei sa sketchura te mira class ti Salvador ngal ilal tutang kay del gester gida nga professor Stephen Palumbi na Stanford University nga man magtatalo ora tokora ta matokora wamranda emal kloa expertise ring nga direct mal familiar Pacific lengam ne professor Hawaii University of Hawaii Lara University of Hawaii and then mal leungi laurerer mar adra Harvard University ang ilul mo mga Harvard mandira kalman ne ungi lauro lorungi ding los mara Hawaii ma tial kleal dra Pacific mangadim lor Harvard del kelgi waset ya mal magalgolt so umlo til tial kalgolt tra Massachusetts ar adra Stanford malarngi mangase erek por Stanford un dia alwa weather Hawaii din tribulungi la weather ngira Massachusetts umlo aldo mangara Stanford makatal ngara Stanford engang makatatal partner e collaborator gi de makalorior e ukmlo artel ngatiang la el time modamle askerni mungme e gor aisa be bira udol gi da matmokla ndinga direct ngani sel dos National Academy of Science rablur amrigel ti al other tirgel gora amal maral isir scientist rablur amrigel etiang respected el prestigious el adlen tirgel tap el scientist rablur amrigel amu partner ngi sel once in a while asum gora ngi aklol issue face ngi ablur amrigel mablul et askar tiagi the National Academy of Science lo askam kor otobdia omsu ma report el girel tiagi el issue ela hadam dingel waseng mal lawan talla marklo el issue the face ngi ablul ada atora amrand el momat artiar kleal the maigal betogol problem tial blul ada face because of climate change matamle askar National Academy of Science lo waseng kam goramo musube motobdia gora report lo waseng ngaray gel sa edel mga mok increase our resilience ra coral reefs ngara sa edel mul mong sisi ay gal karger mora gal tokora wa climate change maigal tokora threats engay gidel professor Palumbi ra Stanford University ablel askargin mo chair tiagidel group mo meser tiang matamla tabdi ako ta reporter til giga ngani sel second reporter til merun mong sa elgor o ay sergida ora di overview seguido lurerir ma direct legal role gida collaborate on will help build our resilience ra coral reefs Steve this
so long Director Golbuu so long Mr. Salvador. Thank you all for letting us come to Palau and work on corals, and Andrea for setting up so many wonderful donations and such great interaction with the communities, and Jerry for running a fabulous research program at PICRC. Many people come from around the world to work here because the reefs are so amazing and they're so beautiful. And PICRC is so welcoming, and it's so well put together. So thank you, Dr. Golbuu, for making sure that we have a place to work. It's really fabulous. And also the things that happen here are getting to be more and more well known all around the world, including some things that are just charming ways of interacting with the community. So I was always really loving the calendar that PICRC does, with all the school children's pictures on it, and I would always buy them and take them home and show them to people, and then people in my town got excited about that. I live in Pacific Grove, which is a little town in California on Monterey Bay, and right here I'm going to give you, Dr. Golbuu, the very first Pacific Grove United School District calendar. It's inspired by your calendar, and it's written, drawn by, just like you do, all the classes in from 1st to 12th grade in Pacific Grove. And a graduate student of mine, Katrina Houchal, really spearheaded this. And it was inspired by the way that you have been doing this, the way inspire students and get them involved in marine life. So that calendar there is just a token of our thanks for that idea, because it really is a very good idea, and it's the kind of thing I think that shows what you do here can spread around the world, and what can happen here is really important here, but maybe you don't know how important it is to the rest of the world too, the things that go on here. So just wanted to say thank you for that. We're here working on corals, and the corals around Palau are the reason why the reefs have grown. They have produced the amazing structures that people dive on. They produced the rock islands, after all. And I think some people don't know quite yet that corals are animals. They are very simple animals. They're related to jellyfish, like in Jellyfish Lake, but they make a skeleton. They make this hard part, and that hard part is what we see, and it builds up over years, many, many years, and that becomes the reef. So the reef is so important for catching the waves and growing the fish that everyone eats and producing these magnificent islands. So keeping them healthy is something that I have been really interested in for years and years, and I know that's one of the main motivations here at PICRC as well. So that's what we're here to do, is to try to understand how to keep them healthy, not just now, but in the future, because the ocean is getting warmer. As climate change happens, and as CO2 goes into the atmosphere and traps heat, then the air gets warmer, the oceans get warmer, and it turns out the corals don't like that a lot. They suffer when it gets too warm, and when it gets really warm, they turn white. They're usually kind of a tan color. That's the animal part, and the skeleton underneath is the white part. And when the corals get overheated and die, they turn white because you see the skeleton underneath. That's called coral bleaching, and that's one of the things that we've been studying. And I know around here you have been studying coral bleaching since. When was your first paper on coral bleaching? 1998, 2003? Yeah,
2007, I think.
Right. So a long history of that. So we are here with PICRC's help in collaboration with Dr. Golbuu to try to understand which corals are the most resistant to that heat, which corals can live at the highest temperatures. Because as the water warms in the future, some corals will survive longer than others. Mm-hmm. And we want to find out which ones, and we want to find out where they are around Palau. So that's one of the things that we've been doing here in this research project, using the amazing resources at PICRC and the boats and the boat operators and the knowledge they have to go around the archipelago and find the corals. We take small samples, and we bring them back to the lab, and we put them in a tank that heats the water up little by little, and then watches how they react. And when they react too badly, then we know that they're very heat sensitive. But some corals don't react badly; they're fine, and those are the heat resistant ones.
And maybe some kind just a general overview of some of the results.
Yeah. I just didn't want to talk forever.
We have a few more minutes.
Professors, can talk forever. So what we have been finding is that some corals in Palau can take much higher water temperatures than we expected them to. Some can't. Some, when you heat them up, they turn white in our tanks and they die. So those are the ones we're trying to find. And we have been traveling the archipelago, taking 400 samples of 400 corals, little tiny samples, testing them, taking them back to Stanford to record the results. And some of them are able to take water temperatures that are much higher than others. And those are the ones that we think are the most heat resistant, the most heat tolerant. So that is exactly what we're trying to find. And that was the first result, right? Can you find them? Can you find the heat resistant ones? And can you do it in a simple way? And then once you find them, can you then use them for the next step?
Okay, thanks, Steve. So Salvador, Professor Palumbi, ako tengulul alter tial calendar, tia calendar sel school abulura California sel ngaringi tia lavra Stanford University sel community ti en masetianga ngamle lol agal bisel merbelang o martial argentine calendar hit gora manno soale me inspiring ngase kame global gora uspe ringi tial skura California tial ngaringi tia lavra Stanford ringi mo tamlong ngase angal ka skura man excited tam lagut maklia tial calendar tial dum ngungil la ndial des ngungil ang calendar do me se mundina sa kadamo full moon do ingrang mo wara tol ndi tianga sel luriol luera el toda calendar le kadamo mara school le mga do angal ka school lo ay se lo asengarang lela asel team mertegi del calendar angal ka school la asabri lo spe art المسوب تيجي القرى تيم إلى سلقوك تيم تيال مران ميرا تيجي اللي جرا أوشن تيال كلب غليل هذا بيت الغرا غرير المورا غواول سيا كوك مران ميلا غلغا سكولا مسبع أرت القرى مسوب سيجي الأيديا so tiagi da kapirngi mlamski da kapirgi ngas malungi larngul lengal ka California asilubi tiargid mga lulugorngia wase maybe se bebira time ko murur belau kor obesa impact raureri outsider belau so atokora research ma waya gid tokora tiale arts and tide calendar gid to clearly nditia de agume sendia ka tide ngi indi arts
Ours does not have the tides on it yet. No.
But ning malungi legal arts yakor omesing ya se tigal ngal gra school amran gora tiu sisi whether ngal gra California ngal gra belau igal art tira gora khmed di musisi malungi la art tira so ngulu ai se direct lu ai se lu ase ngan ne reminder ya lo ase igal miranda iga nga arm el related el mo iga gid le wa ongegat ndi ongegada in fact mal closely related el mur ongegat ndi ongegada difference ringa dia hatial skeleton ringi ya miranda ngari tial skeleton ringi متيجي المران نجيد الارم المران او ميو برتيا سكيلتون رينج امران مول مقلول مو فورما يجيد الغرغير ايغا المول ايغا سكيلتون امران مو اسيا نديغا المران اتوم مال ممغال داو ان موديال سب مو مات مالدوم سيلبيبي لمو ال امران سيلدو سمبليتشين من بارت تيا لوريورا واسي قد مغران eu siga miranda el msisi ese a first phase es el duk tiga el msisi miranda qada se qada magrang us baiga el msisi el miranda el help brigid ma miranda ase la continue el momgal da da ben survive ngaida se la mo tumla halekta que gar el pisra miranda el met testringi yo mesel wasetian survive am gal del temperature etumla tiga miranda كاروس الباشور بلا المسيسي هيت تولرانت el survivable مقال داو so tianga ora ungil ايس لو اسن سبل ابلا غني يجيد المراند el survive مقال داو قال ديغو غير سلفادور واسه كامبيرا جيل لنغا املام سوبا بيبيرا باشول واسه wangarang igal heat tolerant traba mrander bela el monegal bebira blura so Steve the different places you've worked at, what is, do you have idea of how the heat tolerant corals compared to other places like Samoa or other places you've been to and look at this?
Yeah, that's a very good question because we have been able to do the same experiment in different places, not lots of different places yet, but a few, because the stress tanks that we use to heat the corals up are pretty small and they're portable. I've taken them on planes and I've done this work on ships. We've done a lot of work in Samoa, and in American Samoa, for example, the corals, when we heat them up to 34 degrees, some of them are resistant to heat. A lot of them are not at 34 degrees. But here, everything seems to be, of the species we're talking about, almost all the corals are resistant to 34 degrees. So right away we know that most of the corals here in the species we're working on are as heat resistant as the most heat resistant in Samoa. But some in Palau are even more heat resistant than that. And in fact, we had to take our experiment and we had to do it over a longer period, because in Samoa we could do the whole experiment in a single day. But in Palau we have to take 2 days to do it, because the corals are so heat resistant that 1 day is not enough to see a reaction. So one answer is that the corals here seem much more heat tolerant than we see in Samoa. I've done a few tests in the Marshall Islands. They're not as heat tolerant. So one good news is you're starting at a higher level, I think, of heat resistance. That's great. But then there's some that are even more heat resistant than that. And we heat them up to 34 degrees, they're fine. We heat them up to 34.5 degrees, they're fine. We heat them up to 35 degrees, and they begin to turn a little pale, but they're still not completely bleached. So those are the ones that we're looking for, the ones that can take the highest temperatures and still survive. We have been mapping the corals. We have been swimming around the lagoons, mostly in patch reefs. Inside the lagoon, because the water is warmer there, and so the corals are naturally more heat resistant because the water is warmer. So me and my students have been swimming around the patch reefs with these GPS machines in plastic bags, finding the corals and getting their GPS coordinates and labeling them and marking them. So we can go back to the same coral over and over, take samples, test it again, basically keep like a medical checkup on them now that we know them. So we have 400 corals around the archipelago that are labeled, and we know where they are, and we can go back and find them and keep testing them. So we did a whole set of tests in the last 2 weeks, and are comparing that to the data that we got this last summer from the same corals to confirm which ones are the most heat resistant. And then we're taking samples of those to use for the next step.
Maybe one more question. Why do you think Palau? This is just...
I don't know. You've lived here for a long time. Why do you think it might be?
Okay, so you're really not sure. Okay.
I have to say that we are really focused on the lagoon, and we do some work on oolong on the outside and abil, and those are not as heat resistant because maybe they're washed by the normal currents. And so I think researchers that only are working on the outside of the reef have a different view because those corals get a little bit cooler water. But I think the future corals are living in the lagoon. And those are the ones that are already heat resistant. We've been finding some of the most fabulous patch reefs in your lagoon. I mean, beautiful fish and lovely corals, lots of different species and colors, and they're shallow and they're beautiful to swim on. And I have to make sure that everybody is like, pay attention to what we're trying to do. Don't go off and taking pictures of all the anemone fish. And I think that's the future, and those species can hopefully thrive a little longer, and so our next step, really, with your help and all the resources that you have, is to begin to move them into cooler places to see whether or not they're still heat resistant, and whether they'll thrive in those areas.
Salvador, agul gergil wase aigel ku komsibera bebira basyolenga aigal tangar ngilo spe el testa heat tolerant wase aigal random sisi india asab elo label mura arus el basyo magul gergil wase aigel ku komsubemra bebira basyon wangaranga wa aigel merander ngia kampel megal merander melbelaw engagid el mlgol wase aigel bebira basyo aigel got el masisi el merander ngi let's say el temperature adori 4 degrees sea igel bebira basio sea mal ngarbabel temperature igel marandra igel basio se morning ya bela mostra marandra velas el survivor se igel temperature direct nganya marandra bela el survive higher than that mangagil direct lo hace sera al gotel mer belang negir el madi farti al sistema ngile sel igel bebira basio di wande igel maranda blitz el belang lo sab el mo komat lo run experimenting mo komat so interesting lo sabe la ngani igel special maranda ngi el kigel basio blalo ngi nguk masisi igel maranda igel basio magulge ngi lo ase ngara ko do swim lo asing ngara mabela mal special ay gidel maranda ngi di halsal kora blagtak lo asing ngara ula bela mal away say di awanda ora do sela se gel dial sela lagun ay gal patrif ay gal malgasok la el ngari maranda ngi ay gal malgasok la sel bol meda eng mal mom galda leng mom eda asil samlu ni mom galda mongor omdas lo hace maybe seguida al duma igal maranda ngara malgasokla am sisi rakleal lengil goram lamo ngani sel time raswel mal mom gal de meda mongor am lamo smau mong wase atigel guk adal me guk tim subra ikrel igal al mol ikrel al mol agu pialo esa igil maranda ligal ngara malgasokla e mal betoga abela mal betoga malgasokla tial el west coast rida mal betoga malgasokla ma northern bela mal betoga malgasokla el betoga igil el maranda ngil mesisi tia direct gora aungil gid el mo dasunil tolo ase kadangal tangat leng betoga igal ka garus el basior gid togol bedengel la basior gid lengani ablu let's say arwa agosrai aye dia halo lagun ndi blul me garger ndia ga lagun ndia ga referring makuk blul warwa marshal sege gukti atol egi dangal tangat le bela ngani ge rogul bedengel la marander bela ngari atol ngari ga gidle barrier reef or ga gidle el mol ngari ga gidle finching reef ay gel dibrega drablu ngari te gidle lagun el to ga gal pat reef aunda se direct el maclo tutril bodo dan se gel rogul bedengel la qagrous el habitat ra maranda qagrous el basio o qagrous el tletele la gargera ngir belau mwa direct el qoraklo ngara al gid obang al wasingid el matmok laigangale kamo sanga ngaramong indim lado ngel wase tial problem ra climate change el mom gal da daw edim lado ngel saigal maranda ngir belau ela hadam lamum dingim kilo da dim lado gargik lum miltamal laigal maranda el ang cada wada blad luz ay gid el mal mesisi el maranda so tia direct el mal clo tutelele son mergid el wasingid el mo otiblo oil matmoklo ay gid el ura ora conservation am clo tutelele en sab edel en chulo ase ay gid el maranda el mesisi a continue ngarngi e plaza al tangaria direct legal diga habodo ngi el sel da continue am sube da momtique al sumo da tomar el ang we would never know those things matianga mal clo tutelele am sube un il gora lesson el mergid el ase suba clo tutelel ma direct lo ra matmok la clo tutelel so yegi di agora update ra tialurior e direct el sel next el mea professor Palumbi maybe the hook asker ngi mo giva tok ada mo available more adam tigel mo sobre el mea correns sel go mo provide more detail so next time you come, Steve, we'll give a talk and maybe we can do it on the radio also.
As you know, what we're trying to do is plant out these corals now. We have the 50 most heat-resistant ones that we found and the 50 least heat-resistant ones, the most heat-sensitive. And we put them on panels, 100 each. And then those panels are going to go off at 6 different reefs around the archipelago. We're going to start deploying them in about an hour, and then we're going to see how we can grow these into the future. And the ability to regrow corals is a really important thing for the future. You know, if we want the reefs of the world to be able to withstand the next couple of decades of climate change and all the other things, we need to be better coral gardeners. You know how to garden. It's such a beautiful garden all around here. People know how to plant the plants they need, that support them, that feed them, that save the shoreline, like the mangroves. We know how to plant plants. And we're trying to learn how to plant the corals. Which corals to plant where, which ones are better in warm water, and which ones in colder water, which species where. We know how to do that with plants. We don't know how to do it very well with corals. And so that's what we're trying to do. And it's not going to be people who fly in from Stanford who do it. It's going to be you and your children. And so that's what the calendar is so good for, is like, okay, can we teach people to do these things for themselves, their own environment? We were working with the community in Kaingal. A shout out to the community up there, and starting to learn how to plant out corals there. So we're really trying to help people plant the corals that help bring the fish back and keep the reef safe, because it's such a gorgeous and beautiful place, and it's just something that has to be saved and preserved and grown.
Salvador, direct din ako sa igagid lo masub ngo parte tiga lo masuba sa kada makarang malalim may igagid el masisi el mirande malalim so ila masuba o mesel sa selda dal may gal masisi el mirande rangot el basio en continue di masisi adang morangot el basio moluser sa igid el clisi el lensgum digam masisi ada dal marabek el basio bluas en sa edel malal may gal mirande le kada mokro ged el girela atial meral mil time di loral mumgal datab so tiang amat lo tutere en direct al malungi la tingel dilil wase ator o malal melmrand matora umot mokra cargera de al adra Stanford or adra ngot al blue tiang amal dependra adra belau maigal community belau so tiga partner gi de ga inga sera umsu ga inga se lo rior disel decision lo seguida mo sobre legal cargera gi sea decisión erguida adar belau maigal carros el blue maigal communities ra blue belau son malungil mesets al besquida steve magdamaloren azulel no sabe el cho erguida ko kora update erguida tegid lo sobre egal mesisi el mirandra blue belau. Thank you Steve.
Sulange Dr. Golbuu ngade akwa de somil maswe
ya Salvador mlamo tidel ngania tul announcement mahalle tedil give those two announcement and then the close.
Hoy musubeseng diswagal mo reminder atra blue wasesele Arts and Tides calendar contest tamrar el altam ayun na distribute el presentation en mora MOE mung namugir mo el school public school rogoy dim de la tablo school diga giboringi and sukum mo morens el altam me deadline a March se last el Friday ra March. En gire la el artwork ng gra school le rogoy el mera PICRC le judging among aringira April ma kulingit tumtrigel sense rogoy ma parents encourage sarang giul rulia drawing ertir ya theme gidel el araga our ocean wealth extends from coral reefs to the deep blue and beyond. Tial presentation akmal mungil el smoothie seguid most of elangal galdi rongosi sel presentation gore hopefully el release el artwork ma de la na sel last Friday ra March el ANDREA ya sumangar nga karmin sa pamilyon contact ra Ines ra 4886950 ra center emod aduaring for more information or sel Arts and Tide dire karangaring sel summer internship program ra PICRC temorir el summer ra June ma July te open mo rangal ka tainga tirar giril ngal karbelaw kimalar at least at the foreign ngal ka school masumga na school ra PCC maluga nga na college cycle belaw interested mutangan mo ra website tra PICRC.org engaring ya application form filingi e moduro clean mera era end el almand el February deadline bolsa evel gat atu e bodo ngel wa say most of em qualify mortal summer internship program. Hindi gaygide.
Sulang Geraldine Salvador tegi del internship program tiang daurang asule la Blue Bay le tirgai funder ngi ma selme ngal school sa ngarnya أوضو دل سبعة دل لو سبعة مرو لقي البروجكت ترتير إديرك الغنيا أوضو دل قرا سيسل أوضو دل سل قرا يل دوس ستايبند ترتير من سل قرا أسامر التمرو لا على انترسيو غنيا سيسل أوضو دل سل قرا على لاب قرا قصو قارتير أسامر سون مالون البرنامج ويجلو لغة شرالدين تيامل دي مورا نغال بلاو maybe كده مو accept راه نغال غود البلول قرا متلورتي دي تيالو دي وان نغال غود البلول مانا مفتوق application الميجي كسا application نغال بلاو تلا قرا مangin مو المقمدة deadline دي توم تانيا أدلورين سلقرا parents غانيا نلقي نغال غاليت malubet tanganya adril nga kalait el encourage tir masum mlo ya sa irong sitiang sa baril kora aplan meter intensive malungit program masilbe birata masambay kire del gidar adult dekal mochoner tal intensive program malungi la program dalgat makler watcher din el girel Salvador di mdege gida update meklut el mal de oren asulem تيال تيال نص أمام المية وق مقدور أدر بلاو لوجي وتيال راديو ستيشن رخاو ويل أول دول غول واسه تيال غور ريف سنتر تيان غور ريف سنتر جيد الغوكلير أدر بلاو من كلوتو تلل بولس بيد المية وقو أيسر أدر بلاو واسه جيدا بيبيرا وريور تيال غور ريف سنتر جيدا مغت مقلو مغمال مسار تيال تيال إذا المالو مساولا تيجار listeners النصو الشو إنرجي ذا ما تيال نامو مريق الأول دغورا مساعدة قال بيبيرا ورورا هوري سنتر تيم مرجي ذا سيل تيجي ال 18th anniversary so تيم مرجي ذا تيارو جيرا راغا واسه building a strong foundation for a resilient future يا أدرا سنة مالملوني translator عندي كم لا بس el translation ارتير سير لونغ دو president سنة مالملوني لويدي ndi tiang qora wase qadam qarang emru rigid maqadam sisi ekalt mokl el gire la yel ngar madad el qora mumtar sul tgol gida o mesra ngar madad el time ngasen qada building a strong foundation for a resilient future maigal urol gida matmokl aigal tgora arts and tide maigal tgora internship maigal gida lo msuba msisi el miranda ma recovery miranda aigea mal de ngosu gida wase قدم غران قلت موكل MCC مع سبقية الأوبرقام يجيد البتوغل challenges المرال مير عن المدى التايم مما المساو لربيك الآن راح سبورتر تير راح قول ريف سنتر مع نيونجي الفاندريسينج دي كان نصبئين مغت موكرا سيرا جانواري 17 again Salvador kamal masaw tialte al lool masanga or reef center me mga dadura adra balu man sulang